Hello there, my very good friends. On today's wrestling news, we have a major update on WWE's plans for Becky Lynch.
3 titles change hands at NXT TakeOver.
We've got another huge update, this time on Adam Cole's future after NXT TakeOver.
Nick Khan says WWE is not for sale.
And speaking of cans, it looks like Tony has taken a little shot at WWE. I'm Andy Murray.
I'm Adam Wilborn, and this is the news.
Don't know why I said my voice really weirdly there, but we're here. We're here to give you the morning news. And later on today, we'll have even more news for you. We're going to do a podcast special, apparently, I'm told, after Simon Miller's NXT TakeOver ups and downs go up. So look out for that on the channel later on. Maybe it'll just end up being a normal video, who knows, but I'm going to shut the hell up now and get into our first story. Becky Lynch is a heel now.
What?
Yep, that's a thing. PW Insider's Mike Johnson reporting as such overnight, stating that Becky is going to be booked by WWE as the top heel on SmackDown going forward, and her first feud, unsurprisingly, will be against Bianca Belair. Now, this comes following the events of SummerSlam. It was supposed to be Bianca versus Sasha Banks. Sasha Banks wasn't cleared. Carmella came out. Becky made her grand return for the first time in over a year, beat up Carmella, challenged Bianca, squashed her in one move, effectively, the Uranagi, and then the pinfall. She's the new SmackDown Women's Champion. It was a divisive moment, but, you know, the heat was not on Becky Lynch,
No.
who was coming back and is like the most organic folk hero in WWE over the past few years. The heat was on the company for making that decision in the first place. So I'm going to let you spill on this one, Adam Wilborn. I feel like you've got thoughts on it, but to me, this seems very out of touch with what the audience actually wants from Becky Lynch.
When will they learn with Becky Lynch that they come out of SummerSlam all the time and go, she's a heel now? And we go, no, we love her. She's a babyface. We just want to cheer her. Like you say, Andy, people weren't furious on Twitter and in the stadium on Saturday night because Becky Lynch beat Bianca Belair in 30 seconds or whatever it was. It was because we all know WWE booked that to be the case.
Yeah.
I can understand why. I was trying to defend it partially. I was upset, but I was trying to, see where it's going potentially with this, because I thought, well, you can say you've done the match, but you haven't done the match, and you can advertise the match for another show, and you've got the intrigue of where we go from here. And also, I will say this, positioning Becky Lynch as the top heel is great in terms of I've no doubt that she could absolutely nail being the top heel on SmackDown, although you've got a really good top heel on SmackDown and her name is Sasha Banks.
Yeah,
and
she's pretty good.
Poor bloody Monday Night Raw in amongst all this, by the way, going, can we have something? But inexplicable, like you say, Andy, that they see that reaction, and even if they had decided that beforehand, surely they must know when Becky Lynch returns, people aren't going to be like, oh, bloody hell, here she is. Well, she want the spotlight again. People were desperate to see her back, and yet they've gone, no, she's a baddie now.
Yeah, it's really detached, I think, from what the audience wants to do with Becky Lynch, but so was Saturday night. So, know, if you're going to trust someone to knock any situation out of the park in that division, it would be Becky, but it's hard to be optimistic about this, put it that way.
Yeah, let us know your thoughts in the comment section on that one. And we'll move on to NXT TakeOver 36. It went down last night, and in my opinion, it was absolutely sensational. I don't think they put a foot wrong last night in terms of the results. And we had 3 title changes on the night. Poor old Raquel Gonzalez was the only champion who went into that show and left with their title. Samoa Joe is the new NXT champion, and now only the first ever 3-time NXT champion. He beat Karrion Kross in the main event with the bloody muscle buster. Pop my little tiny tits off for that one. In other huge news, Ilya Dragunov ended Walter's 870-odd day reign as NXT UK champion, submitting Walter in yet again another probably 5-star classic from these two. And in the best news of all, Andy Murray, Cameron Grimes, baby, to the moon, is finally your $1 million champion. He defeated LA Knight on last night's show. Hitting him with the cave-in, 1, 2, 3. Now you've got a little bit of help from the $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase, but enough about all that. Cameron Grimes is champion, and, well, we'll talk a little bit about Adam Cole in due course, Andy, but loved last night's show.
Yeah, 3 big title changes here. Well, you know, the LA Knight Cameron Grimes thing, that was just a nice story, isn't it? It was always going to be, you know, the thing that happened, the feel-good moment for Cameron Grimes, finally winning that belt after falling short and being a butler for however long. He's just a really entertaining guy. Obviously, Walter losing the UK title for how it was, like 860 days or whatever.
Something like that, yeah.
That's wild, man. That's wild. But hey, who better to lose it to than his career best rival? And of course, Karrion Kross, you'd imagine, is probably going to be main roster exclusive, right? You look at that and things look dicey a little bit for him on Raw at the moment, despite his recent upturn. But yeah, Joe, 3-time champion. Hey, that's the history books. That's history-making stuff.
Yeah.
Adam Cole, lost that match to Kyle O'Reilly last night. Was probably about a third of the runtime that a lot of people were expecting, ourselves included.
Great
Worked
stuff.
to the benefit. Yeah, good. Thank you. Thank you for that, guys. It was really tremendous. But he lost. And now we've got an update on his WWE future. Of course, that's been up in the air recently. Fightful Select coming through after the show, reporting that Cole hasn't signed a new deal with WWE yet, and that the short-term extension he agreed to sign in July to work through SummerSlam weekend is due to expire very, very soon, so he could potentially become a free agent. PW Insider, meanwhile, are reporting that Cole is at least done with NXT. No more appearances on the black and gold brand after being one of the standouts there. Yeah. That, to me, would suggest 2 things. Number 1, main roster. If he sticks around, everything else. That, however, would require a pretty big concession on WWE's behalf, because they'd have to allow for his Twitch channel that he has vowed to not give up. Zelina Vega has had to give up Twitch since returning. NXT wrestlers are not bound to that third-party clause, which is why he's been able to do it so far. So that would, you know, they have to have some wiggle room there. Or number 2, he may end up leaving. So the Cole saga rumbles on. It's going to be interesting to follow whatever he does.
Surreal reaction to last night's show, by the way. Last night's match, I should say, with Kyle O'Reilly. BS chants at the end. I was so thrown by that. Like, I get it, it was maybe not the ending we were expecting. It wasn't such an epic conclusion in terms of, like, he hit him with 20 finishers. But I'll be honest, I was pleasantly surprised by that fact. Like you say, the runtime was the right amount. It didn't have Triple H's fingers all over it. And the story was Kyle O'Reilly submitted him with one arm, because he's great. And that's the maneuver that Adam Cole has been susceptible to in the build. I put that to one side. Look, Adam Cole, one of the greatest NXT wrestlers of all time, if this is the end for him, like you say, Andy. And if I was WWE, I would be moving heaven and earth and giving him whatever he wants to make him stick around. I'd like, personally, you and Phil were saying on the stream on Saturday, if you're going to put him anywhere, SmackDown seems like the best place for him. Again, poor old Raw, because there's just so many exciting potential matchups there, and it feels like that brand maybe fits him a little bit better. Yeah. But put him on Raw, build the show around him, let him do Twitch, because, it's just dumb, this weird fight that they have on hands. Although the fact Britt Baker's lockjaw, last night's show might be a little bit of a clue where he may be heading up. He may be going to AEW. And it's fair to say, in WWE's own words, AEW've got a fair bit of momentum going on right now. But let us know your thoughts on Adam Cole's future in the comment section. And in the future of WWE, according to Nick Khan, who says, according to Vince McMahon, WWE is not for sale. He, of course, did that interview that's been talked about all over social media over the weekend with Ariel Helwani. He is the President and Chief Revenue Officer of WWE. That's his official title. But chatting to Ariel for BT Sport, he said, people call all the time about different things, but we're not in any active conversations about any of that. WWE sale, that is. We're not trying to sell. That's not our intent. There are no internal meetings about the company. The internal meetings are about growing it. You buying this, Andy?
Well, I don't know if I'm buying, but it doesn't sound like they're selling, for sure. Hey, there you go. I don't know. I've always kept talk like this at arm's length. I think that any moves will be made in the shadows, away from prying eyes and everything else, at least as much as they can for a publicly traded company and everything else. So, it's an interesting interview with Nick Khan, for sure. He's good at spinning things, for sure, that guy. He's quite a compelling talker, actually, whether you agree with him or not. But another thing he brought up during this interview, which segues into my last story here, he's talking about, developmental and about how WWE want to make, if somebody wants to become a WWE wrestler, they want the process to that to be kind of accessible, and someone should know what they do, easily accessible, know how to get in, even if the road to the top is going to be difficult. Now, Tony Khan of AEW, Battle of the Cans here in Pro Wrestling in 2021, tweeted shortly after the interview went out with the following: "Professional wrestling is an art form. You don't create great artists by training them to all paint by numbers in the same way." So obviously he doesn't directly reference WWE, but it seems like a reference on developmental there. Look, I love this stuff. I think it's fun. Shots are entertaining, and don't get mad at them, please.
No, exactly. We're not going to comment too much on this. It's just fun to mention it, and let the comment section have at it, because I've already seen the replies to Tony Khan's tweet, and nuanced debate as always on wrestling Twitter. Speaking of which, let's move on to your Twitter questions. Just a quick reminder before we do that, though, as Andy said, we're going to be doing a podcast special covering a whole load of other news, SummerSlam, Fallout, and looking ahead to Monday Night Raw later on today. That's going to be coming out after Miller's ups and downs later on. Twitter, though, at WhatCulture WWE, if you want to get in touch with us. First question today comes from UKE, who says, "Morning, you handsome legends." Oh, stop it, you. 2 nights ago at SummerSlam, and the Wilborn voice is required, he says, "Was that John Cena's last wrestling match ever?"
So a report came out shortly after the event from Dave Meltzer, Wrestling Observer Radio, saying that this might be the last time we see John Cena as a wrestler, and he's in Hollywood now, he's got other priorities. I think there's a good chance it was. It was a good match to go out on, for sure. It was suitably dramatic for John Cena's style and everything else. A big stage, failed at the chance to become a 17-time world champion and make that record his own. It's a very appropriate one for me, for sure. And look, bald patch is getting a little bit hard to hide these days, isn't it, John? So probably best to step away before you have to start spraying it on.
Yeah, I don't think it was probably his last wrestling match ever. I think that eventually they will just find a whole boatload of money and throw it at John to do a big, pomp and ceremony. This is his last wrestling match. Maybe put a retirement stipulation or something on the line. But yeah, I don't think we're going to see him in and around WWE for a long time. The summer of Cena is over, and if only we had another summer of someone to take its place, hey? Second question today comes from Eric. That's Jenny's husband. Eric says, with his loss at TakeOver, is there any chance Walter might show up on Raw to be Drew McIntyre's next feud?
God, that would be one hell of a feud in a match, wouldn't it? That's deliciously beefy, and I'm no vegetarian. I love my beef. Yeah, I think there's a good chance of this. I mean, he was NXT UK champion forever. What else has he got to do? Unless you want to run him against Joe for the NXT title, that could be fun as well. And there's all kinds of exciting prospects with regards to Walter. I will say that in the past, he has been very reticent to want to move from Austria or Germany, wherever he lives in Europe, to the US to be part of the main roster. And I don't know if he'd be particularly well used long term, but in recent interviews he has sounded a little bit more open to it. So without giving you a concrete yes or no, I think your idea is great. I think he's certainly closer to that than he has been in the past.
Yeah, I don't think he'll show up tonight on Raw, but I like that idea going forward. Tempered, as Andy alluded to there, with how they booked him at Survivor Series, where Vince must have looked at him and gone, "Oh, you beat him." But now he's a big beefy boy. I love the idea of him versus Joe for the title as well, Andy. So it'll be intriguing to see what they do with him next. But yeah, moving him along from NXT UK does feel like the right thing to do. Just look at him and look at what he's capable of. He's always pulling out huge matches and getting attention, and that chop just gets everyone's attention, especially the person he's fighting. Shout out again to Walter and Ilya Dragunov for just kicking the crap out of each other last night. Right, final question today comes from Ryan Ahad, who says, so if Bray goes to AEW, shout out to Andrew Pollard for reporting that on yesterday's news, do you think he should pair up with Abaddon, make a pair that will probably creative satisfy Bray or potential fans? Andy, I know this is your favourite story.
Yeah, it's my favourite stuff in the world. I think that if Bray Wyatt goes to AEW, no supernatural stuff at all. Stay the hell away from that thing. Now, I have commented in the past that I don't know if he would be happy doing that because his brand of creativity is very out there. But I imagine this is the kind of thing that would come out in the wash when him and Tony Khan are having conversations about contracts and everything else. No, I would like them to avoid all. I don't think supernatural stuff has a place in AEW, honestly. Like, even with the Abaddon character, they've tried to stress that that's someone who thinks they're a zombie, not an actual zombie.
Yeah.
And Tony Khan has said in the past that he hated the Matt Hardy teleporting stuff and shouldn't have done it. Yeah, for me, it's good. It's an interesting fit in AEW. I don't know if it's necessarily a good fit, but I would love to be proved wrong.
Yes, I think a lot of people go, oh, well, Taker, Undertaker, that is, worked.
It's the one example.
Yeah, it did. And it also didn't always work. Let's be perfectly honest. It worked, for the large proportion of it. But I guarantee if you go back and watch certain stuff, you'll go, ooh, not sure that stands the test of time. I've got to be careful here, Andy, because what I was going to say is, look, I think Bray Wyatt's an incredibly creative person, and he could go and do more of his sort of cult leader stuff, which doesn't need the supernatural stuff. But then I realised we're sort of treading on the toes of the Dark Order, and I personally believe you got to leave that alone. I know people have said, oh, you should take over from, take Brody Lee's old spot. I don't know. I feel like that's just untouchable now. What do you think, Andy?
Yeah, I think that stuff's really crude, like unintentionally crude. People are well-intentioned when they say these things, but I don't know, man. It seems a bit raw to go, hey, my beloved friend who passed away, I'm going to step. I'm not into that kind of stuff personally. Everyone has their different opinions, and we welcome different opinions, and we can talk and discuss. And I'm not saying people are wrong or whatever, but no, I think he should do his own thing.
Yeah.
If he comes to AEW, Kendall Windham, the Cult of Windham, or whatever it's going to be called.
He's definitely got some more ideas in that big bag of tricks of his, hasn't he? Right, let's move on to today's and finally, and just a nod to the brilliant CM Punk. Everyone's been talking about him over the weekend, and nice to have this confirmed overnight last night that he was the one who footed the bill for those ice cream bars handed out at the end of AEW Rampage. What a lovely bloke he is, Andy.
Yeah, it's like Andy Kaufman taking an audience out for milk and cookies after a show. Great stuff. It's a nice move. Good guy. Nice. Thank you. I didn't get any ice cream bars, but thank you.
Yeah. I don't think I've ever had an ice cream bar. Send us one in the post. I'm sure that's fine. And won't be ruined by travel to WhatCulture. But yeah, lovely stuff. And what a bloody brilliant weekend in general, whether you're an AEW fan, WWE fan, Impact Wrestling fan, whatever you like. It's been sensational these last few days as a wrestling fan. So just enjoy that, eh? Let's all be nice to each other. Let us know your thoughts on that and all of today's news stories in the comment section below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And subscribe to WhatCulture Wrestling on either iTunes, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts from, for daily wrestling podcasts. Me and Sid are going to sit down and talk about Rampage and talk about TakeOver. And we've got that podcast special talking all about the stuff we mentioned earlier on later today as well. Plus, let us know your Twitter questions on Twitter at WhatCultureWWE. Watch there, follow both of us. You can follow Andy Murray at
Andy H. Murray. The H stands for heliosis, which is another word for sunburn, which is exactly what happens when me and this pasty guy over here go outside.
Yeah, exactly. Never ends. Follow me on Twitter at Adam Wilborn. Follow us all at WhatCulture WWE. But for now, my thanks to Andy Murray. Thank you for joining us, and we will see you soon.
Scottish and a ginger. We get burned.